So dudes, it's your boy Tuhu. Last week, the first of my 5 most anticipated gacha games of this year has come out, Magia Exedra, and I've been playing it since Friday. Reason why I didn't start on like day 1 or day 0, because technically it released a day early for some regions I think, was because it should have had a PC release on Steam, but for whatever reason, it's apparently not ready yet, and I waited a day hoping that they'd fix it, but clearly that's not the case. So I've been playing on my phone and then my tablet because right now it's the only way that I can actually record footage for the game is through my tablet, given that emulators for the most part don't work at all with Exedra for whatever reason. And so for the sake of content creation, I want to get a first impressions video on Exedra out there so that people know what the god of gacha has to say about it. For those of you new here and you're asking yourselves, why the hell does dude with all these anime body pillows on the wall behind him just call himself the god of gacha or something like that? Let me introduce myself properly. I'm Tuhu, and I'm the god of gacha games. I've been playing gacha for the last 8 years, and I currently main a dozen, actually no, it's now 13 gachas with the addition of Exedra last week. Exedra's been on my radar ever since I first heard about it last year or so. I watched the original Madoka anime series, and watched Rebellion over a decade ago with my buddies back when it first aired in North America. We'll probably go watch the 4th movie too whenever that comes out, hopefully later this year. I've read a couple of spin-off mangas, most notably the one that has Mikuni and Kirika in it, and I briefly played Magia Record back when its NA server first came out for about a month or so. Unfortunately, I didn't really enjoy Record, mainly because its gameplay didn't really appeal to me, but I did play it for as long as I could because I wanted to give it as fair of a shot as possible, and I'm a fan of the IP, though I suppose you could say that it was probably a good thing that I ended up dropping Record because the game ended up EOSing anyway. So when Exedra was announced, I was like, alright, I'll give this one a shot too, see if I like it better than Record back in the day. Judging from its preview trailers and whatever other gameplay screenshots we had at the time, it basically looked like a Honkai Star Rail clone to me, and since Star Rail is one of the many gachas that I main, I figured it'd be pretty simple picking it up and adding it to my rotation. And having played it for the past week or so, I want to share my thoughts on the game so far, so that you guys who are on the fence about whether or not you want to pick up Exedra for yourselves can make a more informed decision about it. One very important disclaimer that I want to make very clear right now. I normally do not make these sorts of first impressions videos, because I genuinely believe that you cannot make a true review of a gacha game unless you've been playing it for quite some time. Like, we're talking at least a whole year. This is because gacha games are live service games, and so they evolve over time in any number of areas, including but not limited to gameplay, developer support, and player feedback. So in order to make a review that I would consider to be valid, you'd need to first play a gacha and keep up with it for a while, and then make a review on it so that way you have as complete of a picture of how that gacha works and how well it's being supported as possible. This is something that unfortunately most gacha content creators out there who do reviews of this kind do not do. With one of the few exceptions obviously being Mr. Psyche, who was actually the one who suggested that I make a first impressions video on Exedra to begin with, so shoutouts to him for giving me the push to make this video. But I do recognize the importance of putting out first impressions videos like this, because obviously when a new gacha comes out, you can't just wait a whole damn year before talking about it. And it's not like you can't have any kind of support or criticism for a brand new gacha, because there are still people out there who want to know, right, what they're getting themselves into before playing it. And so with that logic, along with Mr. Psyche's encouragement, here I am with a first impressions video on the most recent gacha to join my lineup, Madoka Magica Magia Exedra, or just Exedra for short. I'll discuss the gameplay and infrastructure, the gacha and the monetization, and at the end of the video, while I won't give this a score or anything like that, I will tell you if I recommend picking up Exedra or not. Oh, and so far I've been playing Exedra completely free to play. I might decide to spend money on this game later on, but for now, I don't have any immediate plans to. First, the gameplay. I said earlier that Exedra's gameplay looked a lot like Star Rail's, and upon playing it, yeah, that's pretty much what it is. It is exactly Star Rail's gameplay. for the most part. So I'm going to make a lot of comparisons between these two games. For those of you who quit Star Rail recently due to the whole global account passive drama, you'll find most of Exedra's gameplay to be quite familiar. I just think that if you did quit Star Rail over something as insignificant as an account passive, then I don't know what makes you think you'll be able to handle this game, because people like you will just find something else to get pissed off about. While Star Rail has a 4-character lineup for your team, Exedra has 5, meaning that on average teams are stronger and have more opportunities for more team depth and synergies, thanks to that 5th character. Character roles are also very similar. Every magical girl has an element and a class, just like how every Star Rail character has an element and a path. However, Exedra only has 6 elements and classes, compared to Star Rail's 7 elements and 8 paths, which means that players have less elements and classes to worry about when it comes to team building and what kinds of enemies they have to worry about countering. The most interesting aspect of these differences is that Exedra has a dedicated breaker class, and characters in this class do exactly what they sound like: break enemies as fast as possible. Note that unlike in Star Rail, where you must match an enemy's weakness with a character who has that same element, in Exedra, any element can reduce the break bar of any enemy, even if they don't match one of their weaknesses, but you do get a big break bonus if you do. Star Rail technically doesn't have an official class like this, though they do have a subset of break effect characters scattered across different paths who functionally do the same thing. However, unlike in Star Rail, where break effect characters are one of the 3 main DPS archetypes, breakers in Exedra are not damage dealers, at least not on their own. The reason why they're not is because this game has an extra break mechanic that Star Rail does not. In Star Rail, when you break an enemy, unless you have Fugue on the team, you can't break them again or make their broken state even worse than it already is. But when you break enemies in Exedra, they instead get a percentage that increases the more your team hits them while they're still broken. This percentage indicates how much extra damage that enemy will take until they recover. Normally it caps out at 400%, but I want to say it can go all the way up to 800% on certain bosses, maybe final bosses that you fight at the end of each chapter. And while any class can increase the scaling, naturally breakers in Exedra increases percentage the best. Essentially, think of the break effect characters in Star Rail and how much damage they do to broken enemies, right? Now take that concept and apply it to your entire team in Exedra, regardless of what class they are. As soon as they break an enemy, especially if it's a boss, your entire team starts pumping out mad damage, especially if you can save your team's skills and ults for right after they break them. So because of this, I consider breakers to be an alternate but important support class. Matter of fact, I can easily see them being one of the most important classes in the game, given how crucial it feels like to break bosses quickly when you fight them. So for those of you who played Star Rail and took enemy weaknesses as a suggestion, buckle up, buddy, because it's probably going to be a much more mechanic in this game this time. Next, the characters, called Magical Girls, since the IP for this game is all about magical girls doing, not so magical things, I guess. Unlike Star Rail and most new gachas these days for that matter, characters come in 3 different rarities instead of just 2. 3-star, 4-star, and 5-star. It seems like most, if not all, 3-star girls also have 4-star variants. For example, this 3-star Ashley Taylor and 4-star Ashley Taylor. But the 5-star girls for now seem to only have 1 variant each, with the current exception being Madoka, who you first start the game with, and has an alternate 5-star variant called Pluvia Magica, who's gacha only. I'm aware that Record, the previous game, eventually added variants of their top rarities like Ultimate Madoka, Demon Homura, and Holy Mami, and I expect Exedra to get the same treatment eventually too. So we'll see how long Madoka remains the exception. I've also noticed that the 3-star and 4-star versions of characters are quite different just from their roles alone. Ashley Taylor, the girl I mentioned earlier, is a dark element attacker as a 3-star, but she's a void element breaker as a 4-star. Not sure if that's going to be really useful information, considering that all the 3-stars in the game are, not surprisingly, bottom tier, and we're all going to be spamming top tiers anyway. Exedra also has light cones, called portraits, in this game. The biggest difference here is that portraits appear to be completely free, as in you don't get them from gacha at all. You have to earn them by playing through story and buying them from event shops. so you don't have to worry about like having to pull gacha for signature portraits like you would in Star Rail. It also seems like portraits can only have one copy of themselves existing at any given time, much like how you can only have one copy of a character that you can use at any time. And just like with the characters, the game automatically combines multiple copies of portraits once you receive them, either directly or once you take them out of your gift box. Strangely, there are only 2 rarities of portraits, 4 and 5 star, which is the opposite of how most big gachas do it these days, with 2 rarities of characters and 3 rarities of weapons. The effects of the portraits themselves don't seem to be that strong. Honestly, I think their stats might be more important here, since some of the 5-star portraits, especially when they've been ascended a couple times, have big stat boosts, though of course this can change in the future. Of note, some portraits are kinda like signatures from Star Rail, where certain portraits have extra effects if they're equipped to specific magical girls, but they seem to be nowhere near as strong as like the signature light cones in Star Rail. Now for the actual gameplay itself. The in-game UI is almost the same. You got the turn order on the left, though now you can see what I assume are the specific speed values of every character and the enemies on the field. You got your auto, battle speed toggle, pause, and enemy info buttons on the top right, and your team info on the bottom, which displays HP, buffs and debuffs, and energy called MP in this game. Hell, even the camera angles are modeled directly after the camera angles you'd find in Star Rail. Of note, the 2x speed in Exedra still feels pretty slow compared to Star Rail's 2x speed, to the point where I think it'd be nice to have a 2.5 or even a 3x speed in Exedra, but that's just me. Maybe performance will be a bit better on PC once the Steam version releases. Every character has a basic attack, skill, ultimate, and a talent called abilities in this game. However, different from Star Rail, all characters in Exedra also have a second talent called support abilities. Strangely, these are not unlocked until you get like really deep into the story, and I'm not sure why they don't introduce these to you earlier. Anyways, this is how support abilities work. Once they're unlocked, you go to your team setup screen, and each character slot has a support slot indicated by the circles down at the bottom. You assign other characters who aren't already a part of the current team to the team, and each active character can have one other non-active character assigned to them. Characters who are assigned as supports have different support abilities that are all conditional, so make sure that you're giving the right support abilities to the right characters. For example, I pulled Oriko, but I'm not using her at the moment, so I have her assigned to Homura because Oriko's support ability specifically buffs attackers like Homura. And just like how in Blue Archive, the backliners in that game give a portion of their stats to the frontliners, the same concept applies here too. Support characters confer a percentage of their own stats to whoever they're assigned to. Also note that 5 stars have much better support abilities than non-5 stars. Essentially, support abilities seem like they're an extra way to put characters that you're not currently using to use, and to a certain extent, it does also incentivize you to roll for more 5 stars if you want the best support abilities possible. How important support abilities and characters are, I'm not exactly sure yet. I'm sure they can be very powerful later on, once we have access to more characters, and we can level them up too, but for now, leveling up your main team directly seems to be more important. The skill point cap has been increased to 6 over 5 in Star Rail because you have a 5th character to work with, and you also start with 5 skill points by default compared to only 3 out of 5 in Star Rail unless you have Hanabi. Each basic attack gives you a skill point, and each skill costs a skill point, same as Star Rail. Energy works almost the same way. Basic attacks give your characters a little bit of MP, while skills give you more. The difference is that skills in Exedra seem to give your characters a lot more energy than skills in Star Rail do on average, but you have 5 characters to decide whose skills to use, so skill point management feels even more important in Exedra. Your characters can also gain a bit of energy from getting hit by enemy attacks, just like in Star Rail, but there are already bosses and even some regular enemies who can drain your charge when it took us until Panakani for us to deal with enemies like that in Star Rail. Hell, there are even some enemies in Exedra who can hit you with an energy gain debuff, or in other words, the amount of MP you get from basics and skills gets nerfed, so get used to fighting those kinds of enemies. Ultimates work almost the exact same way as well. Once your characters have enough MP, you can pop their ultimates at any time, even if it's not their turn. Two differences though. First, you can actually skip ultimate animations, which is very nice. I just wish that there was a toggle where the game auto skips ults for you instead of you having to tap skip every single time. And second, the biggest improvement over Star Rail, you can actually cancel your ultimate animations. So no longer need to worry about like fat fingering your ultimate or pop one but then you change your mind but it's too late already. Exedra does not force you to take the L here, you can just cancel it. And speaking of auto, there are two different auto modes, and I kid you not, they are called semi-auto and full auto, like all these magical girls are running around with blickies or something. I mean, Homura and Mami sure do. The only difference between these two modes is that semi-auto does not use ultimates for some reason, while full auto does use ultimates. So unless there's like a weird reason why you don't want to use your team's ultimates, just use full auto. And auto works pretty much the exact same way as it does in Star Rail. Your characters will burn through all their skill points if they're available, with the exception of healers who won't use their healing skills unless one of their teammates have taken enough damage, of course. So there's still a good reason to play manually, especially during boss fights, who will just destroy your teams if they're too underleveled and you just try to yeet them in with auto. The single biggest difference in enemy behavior from Star Rail is that they can crit you, which makes trying to fight higher rated enemies even more dangerous. And of course, if a character dies, there's no replacing them. However, because of the 5-character lineup in Exedra, you're at least a little better off than you are in Star Rail if you lose a character, that is. Though, if you lose your only healer, or like another very critical member of your team, then you're still kind of screwed either way. I don't know if there's someone in the game already who has a resurrection ability. I don't even think we have a 5-star healer in the game yet, so probably not. Last tip about boss fights specifically, the chapter bosses will be very tanky even if you match their power levels, both in terms of health and break gauge. But once you finally do break them, that's when you gotta go ham and slap the crap out of them. They stay broken for a very long time, much longer than bosses stay broken in Star Rail even if you're using Ruin Mei, to the point where your entire team can get like at least 2 or 3 full cycles of attacks in before the bosses recover. So you gotta make the most out of your breaks. Now for the infrastructure. Exedra takes a lot of pointers from Nikke here. It's got its own auto material collection thing that's identical to Nikke's defense outpost auto farm. It even has the free once a day quick collect thing too. There is PvP, though thankfully I consider it to be non-intrusive, and you can do 5 free PvP matches a day, though here it feels more like Blue Archives PvP, where you get like a certain currency that you can then spend at a specific shop that takes that currency. There's a guild system, and they're even called unions too, just like in Nikke, though whether or not they'll have the same functionalities, we'll have to see. I don't know if Record had any like guild raids or something like that, but if it did, then we'll probably get them back in Exedra. Playing through main quests is also just like Nikke. They cost no stamina, and it works off of a combat power rating, much like in Nikke, so you want your team to be somewhere near that power level to have a good chance of clearing it, especially on auto. My experience is that as long as your team is within like 1500 rating, at least in early game, of the recommended, then you should be fine, especially if you take the time to manual it. Though keep in mind that I've been blasting through the game with like top tiers or high tiers mainly, so your experience may vary. There's a ton of main quest content for you to go through, which in itself reminds me of how Nikke launched with like 20 chapters of campaign content back then. There's also a hard mode called Battler, and while fights are a little bit tougher obviously, one perk with the Battler mode is that you can auto all the boss fights too, when normally auto is specifically disabled against both area bosses and chapter bosses in the normal mode. And there's a second hard mode called Nightmare that unlocks once you get past a certain part in the story. And in contrast to Nikke main quests that only give you gems every 5 battles, every quest in Exedra, even the bonus nodes that don't have any combat in them, gives you gems. And once you clear the final bosses of each chapter, you get a bonus of 300 gems per. However, unlike in Nikke, Exedra still has a stamina system, which is used to farm for extra materials like XP and skill mats primarily. Normally, I'm not a fan of stamina systems, but Exedra has the shortest regen time I've ever seen at only 3 minutes per point, so you can at least expect to get your stamina back really fast. Account level ups refund you like 100 stamina each or something, so in early game you'll have a lot of stamina to burn on farming more mats to help you level up your magical girls really quickly. But speaking of account level actually, your character's max level is actually capped at whatever your account level is. In other other words, while the max level for the girls is technically 100, you can't actually get them there right away until your own account level hits 100 first. This will be very strange for you guys who haven't played gachas that do this, such as Blue Archive or Princess Connect. I wish it wasn't really like this either, but it's what we gotta deal with. And speaking of leveling up, character investment is very simple compared to most other gachas, since you only have to worry about character levels and skill levels, and I believe ultimate levels too. There are no character ascensions, as in a character hits a certain max level and you gotta give them specific materials in order to promote or ascend them to the next threshold of character levels. So you can level them up to whatever level you want as long as it's available and you have the XP needed to do it. Technically there is ascension, but that's what the dupe system is called in this game, and each character can have up to 6 dupes total. Unlike in Star Rail and other big gachas though, the dupes mainly give only stat boosts, with only some of them granting extra perks or whatever. Overall, they don't seem as crazy as what you'd see in dupes in the other big gachas. Skill leveling is linear. So long as you have the materials needed to get to the next level, you can upgrade that skill. There's even an all button that lets you just shove everything you have into upgrading that skill to get it as high as possible, which is really nice, but I would like to see a way for you to be able to control exactly what level you want to get that skill to. For example, I tend to level up my character's skills in batches of 5 because I'm just autistic like that. So I'd like it if I could just tap the skill 5 levels above my current and just upgrade it directly like that. Because right now, if you want to level up a character's skill pretty high, but you don't want to just shove everything you have into that, you gotta level it up one at a time. Skill leveling appears to level a character's basic attack, battle skill, and ability all at once, though ultimates seem like they have to be leveled separately because they take different materials. So there are 3 things total that you have to level up for each character, which is a lot better than most other gachas. The single most surprising thing, as you might have noticed by now, is the fact that Exedra seems to not have any gear like relics and Star Rail. It's just portraits that you can equip for some extra stats and effects, and you can only equip one at a time per character, and that's it. So if you're sick and tired of all the gear farming slop that all these new gacha games have these days, then so far, doesn't seem like you have to worry about that here. Events are heavily modeled after Nikke. Each event gives you 5 tokens every day that you can use to clear or sweep quests. You have to go through each one of them to unlock the next one, and you have certain characters and even portraits that give you drop bonuses to farm these events more efficiently. To farm these events better, you can clear a node with a stronger team without full bonuses first, and then you can sweep it after with teams that might be a little bit weaker, but have better bonuses, which kind of reminds me of what you can do in Blue Archives events too. Our latest event with Kyoko even has a solo raid that works almost exactly like solo raids in Nikke, where you fight a boss and try getting as high of a score as possible for more rewards, and there's a leaderboard where you can compare your score against other players. And because I had to delay getting this video out by 2 weeks or so, we've since gotten one more game mode called Battle Tower, which again is basically Tribe Tower from Nikke and works pretty much the exact same way as far as I can tell. Lastly, there is PvP, but it works just like PvP in Blue Archive or Nikke. You get 5 PvP matches a day, and you can choose which opponent you want to face, and you can skip the fight because, well, it's auto. So if you wanted RTA PvP, sorry buddy, you're gonna have to stick with Epic 7 for that one. PvP matches also give you currency that you can spend in the PvP shop at the trader. So again, just like Blue Archive. Now for the gacha and monetization. The gacha works almost exactly like Nikke's, 3,000 gems per multi, which is really expensive, for any banner, and a 20 multi spark pity that lets you exchange directly for a rate up magical girl at the trader. Pity does carry over, kind of. How it was explained to me is that your pity currency gets converted after some undisclosed amount of time into another pity currency that you can then use to roll a permanent gacha of sorts. So it's obviously not quite as good as, say, Nikke's pity, where you can just use your gold mileage tickets in that game to just directly buy any future rate-up character without question, but it's also a little better than Blue Archive's pity, where if you don't use it, it basically just gets thrown out the window. What especially sucks about Exedra's pity, though, is that every single banner in this game has its own separate separate pity. So if you want to reach pity for any particular banner, you have to commit 20 multis to that banner specifically. It's not like either Blue Archive or Nikke, where all the limited rate ups share pity, and you can just choose who you want once you reach it. The base rate for 5-star magical girls is 3%, but the rate up percentage for each individual rate up character is only 0.75%, or in other words, you have a 25% chance of getting the 5-star that you actually want from a banner. And this is definitely taken straight out of Blue Archive's gacha. However, unlike Blue Archive, where rate-up characters get their own separate banners that share pity, Exedra has multi-rate-up banners, and the rate-up percentages themselves for each rate-up character doesn't change. This means that if you're just looking for any one of the rate-ups that are on a banner, then the double or even the triple rate-up banners are stacked in your favor because each rate-up character, like I said, takes up 0.75% of that base 3%. Technically, this is better than how Blue Archive does it, but your trade-off is that you can't switch banners, otherwise you can't hit pity. There are also some extra banners that take keys as currency instead of gems, and you can earn keys or key shards either through events or playing through the game. One of these banners that takes keys is a golden key banner, and these are guaranteed 5 stars, though obviously they're still random. So far, I've gotten 2 of these gold keys just by playing through the game, I'm pretty sure, so that's quite nice. And as a cherry on top, there's a once a day free gacha banner that you can do a free single on every day, and it has normal gacha rates, meaning that if you're lucky and you hit the 3%, that's a free 5-star right there. For its monetization, personally, I expected this game to be like hella monetized, but actually, it's not really the case. There are only a handful of packs. Some of them are like launch celebration packs, and some one-time extra value packs. The most expensive standard pack is only $60, and it gives you enough for 3 multis and then some change. Since the gacha standard these days is like $20 per multi, technically, it means that Exedra's standard $60 pack is a bit more efficient than the industry norm right now, so take that for what you will, I guess. Exedra's battle pass system is very different too. There's no like monthly pass like the Welkin and Genshin or other monthly passes that you might find in other gacha games these days. It's either the premium pass or the regular pass, and they both work like battle passes where you have missions to complete in order to earn their rewards. And while most other gachas have battle and monthly passes that have to be manually purchased every time they expire, the premium and regular passes in Exedra are a true subscription, where you sign up for them once, and then they automatically charge you for every month that they're in use. Though this is a bit worse for people who only buy battle passes every like once in a while, so here in Exedra, they gotta remember to cancel it manually whenever they don't want them. One really hilarious thing, however, is that both of these passes have an initial free trial period, just like your favorite annoying antivirus software, but unlike those, Exedra's trial period works exactly how it sounds like. You can buy these passes, do the missions for their rewards, and then cancel them before they expire. I believe you do need to cancel these passes at least 48 hours before their expiration dates to not get charged, but as long as you do that, then you can essentially get all the pass rewards for free once. Obviously, you can't do this a second time because the game will remember that you've already used up your free trial period, so if you want the pass rewards again, then you'll have to buy them for real. Alright, now for my general thoughts about the game, my likes and dislikes about Exedra so far. Right off the bat, I want to say that I am actually enjoying Exedra because it's basically a handful of gachas that I already play put together. So like Nikke, Blue Archive, and Star Rail. And as a result, I've been able to figure out like how this game works really fast, and so my progress has been smooth sailing for the most part. That, and as I mentioned before, as a fan of the Madoka IP but couldn't get into record back in the day, it feels nice being able to play a Madoka gacha that I actually enjoy. By far the best thing that I like about Exedra is how easy it feels to get started. You can reroll quite easily in this game. After you're done with the tutorial and you do your starter multi, which is a guaranteed 5-star by the way, you have about like 5 minutes or so of menu tutorials before you can reroll. Just tap the account button on the top right and then go to the bottom where it says delete account, and once you confirm and relog, the game puts you right at the starter multi scene because it knows you already went through the tutorial on that device at least. Investing into characters feels very simple since you don't have to worry about farming for a whole whole bunch of stuff, right? Just XP, skill gems, and ult books. There's also quite a few free gems that you can get throughout the game, especially from unlocking archive stuff. Dailies and weeklies are very simple, and all the stuff you'd need to do per login are just to burn your stamina, do your event sweeps, and your PvP matches, which you can skip, unless there's some extra union stuff that you gotta do. So overall, the game feels like it's very low commitment if you ignore the fact that your stamina regens very fast. Last but certainly not least, I haven't felt the need to spend money on anything, not just yet anyway. I've been playing as a free-to-play so far, and I've been able to make steady progress in the main story every single day up until like last week or so, ever since I hit max account level, which is 100. So I can't just like, level up my team past the recommended power level, and now there are bosses that just two-shot my teams, so I'll probably have to invest into like a defender or something. There also seem to be quite a few ways for you to obtain 5-star magical girls as a free-to-play. The tutorial multi, a bonus 5-star or 2, from the anniversary bonus multi if you're rerolling, assuming they're still around that is, and the gold keys and the key shard gachas. There was also a banner that you could pull for free once a day that had the exact same rates as a standard banner, but I think it was only around for like a week or so, and I don't know if it'll come back. Also, I'm not sure how often we can expect to get these 5-star keys or key shards, or if they'll give out entire 5-star characters for free through like events or something. We'll only have a better idea of this as time goes on. We do get more key shards from specific events like the Charlotte raid that I mentioned earlier, and from the new battle tower that just opened up, which has a 2-week reset, but it's certainly a slow grind for now. Now for my concerns and criticisms, and they're mainly about the gacha and monetization, naturally. While the game itself doesn't seem to be too heavily monetized, it's certainly not like to the levels of like Nikke or even Blue Archive, that's for sure. The way that the devs are handling the gacha itself is rather worrying. Just in the past 2 or 3 weeks alone, we've had multiple new banners come out besides launch banners including the Mami, Kyoko, and Sayaka banners, and there was even a GSSR that lasted for just 2 or 3 days. Specifically with Mami's release, I shit you not. For those of you who don't know what a GSSR is, it stands for Guaranteed SSR, and it's a special banner where you can spend paid gems, not free gems, paid, so you have to go buy a pack from the shop first, and you're guaranteed a random 5-star magical girl if you spend a multi with those paid gems on a GSSR banner. There was a launch GSSR, which is fine, but the fact that this 2-day exclusive GSSR and these new banners all came out one after another gives me the impression that these devs for Exedra don't have like a stable gacha like schedule, right? Say what you will about all these other big gachas and how they handle their content, but the fact that their patches are in like 6-week cycles, or at least something close to that, means that their gacha schedules are mostly very stable, and they're not gonna like suddenly jump scare you with like a random banner that they didn't announce beforehand. Like maybe they'll establish a more stable gacha banner schedule later on, but most other gachas that have come out recently don't do their banners like this, where there's like 4 or 5 different banners all at once right at the start. It just doesn't look very good on the devs and comes off as very anti-free-to-play, because how on earth are you supposed to be able to predict all these banners, especially when they start rerunning older characters later on down the road. As for the gacha itself, it's clearly based off of both Nikke's and Blue Archive's gachas, and it's the worst of both worlds. You have the cost of Nikke's gacha at 3,000 gems per multi, but you also have Blue Archive's pity system, where the pity actually not even probably, we know it doesn't carry over technically. Matter of fact, the pity is actually worse than Blue Archives because each individual banner in Exedra has its own pity currency, so it's not shared between different banners. And even though 3% seems pretty good for a base 5-star rate, let me just tell you, I threw all my multis I got grinding story for about like the first week or two. I think it was about like 8 multis or something at the Iroha, Yachio, and Tsuruno banner, and I didn't get a single fucking 5-star. And I spent my guaranteed 5-star key not too long after, and I ended up pulling Yachio anyway, so I just wasted all my multis going for that banner because I ended up getting one of those raid-ups anyway. Oh, and to add insult to injury, I did another 10 Magia key pull, just a regular one I think, and it gave me Yachio again, so F4 Samurai and Pokélabo can go fuck themselves. Thank God I ain't spending money on this trash. To be fair, I probably should have saved all those multis until I had enough to pity at least, and that's definitely how you guys should treat banners in the future, But the point is that unless you're just a lucky ass motherfucker, it's better to assume that you ain't getting shit from Exedra's gacha unless it's somehow a guaranteed 5-star. And the fact that it's the combination of the absolute worst parts of 2 other gachas thrown into a blender together to make this absolute abomination of a gacha makes it feel even worse. It also just takes so goddamn long just to navigate around the game itself. There's always some like fancy ass animation that has to play whenever you click on a button. It takes several seconds for the game to load up a new screen, and there's lots of loading screens around the game, and the game itself lacks a home button, like a dedicated home button that you can hit at any time to just return straight back to the main menu. So, for example, if you're in the middle of story and you want to go level up your characters to keep pushing story, you gotta keep spamming the back button until you finally hit your home screen, because that's where the enhanced tab is. This is basically GFL2 navigation, but like 50% worse. I also don't like how Ascension level, or in other words a character's dupe level in this game, controls how far you can level their ultimates. Here, you can see that I can level up Madoka's ultimate, but that's because she's your default 5-star character, and you can ascend her naturally by going through story. But for my Homura, for example, I can't level her ult like past level 4 or something because she's gacha only, and I only have 1 copy of her. I'm not sure why it works like this, but it does, and this is definitely a downgrade from Star Rail, but we'll see how much of an impact it has on the game itself. And there used to be a bug where the game would load incorrectly at launch, and so you end up getting black screens whenever you enter a new tab, and so you have to hit the back button in order to restore your screen and see what you're doing. Thankfully, restarting the app fixes this, and so it's not too bad, and the bug itself doesn't happen too often, thankfully. And besides, hopefully it's been fixed by now since I haven't seen it in a while, but it's still annoying to have to deal with whenever it does happen. Last but certainly not least, I am personally quite skeptical of the developers, specifically F4 Samurai and the publisher Aniplex, because the way they handled the NA server of Magia Record, their last game, was, to my understanding, very poor and directly led to its closure. Things are a little different now that Exedra got a simultaneous global release, so it's not like we NA players have to worry about, content acceleration issues this time around. But I'm still very hesitant to spend money on this game because at the moment, I don't know if I can fully trust these developers and the publisher to be able to maintain this game competently in the future. The fact that for whatever reason they weren't able to get the Steam version out on time when they, promised it's one of its best selling points certainly doesn't help either. One more thing that I want to add since this video got delayed and I've had 2 more weeks worth of playtime on Exedra. A lot of bosses throughout the game have this really bullshit mechanic of doing more and more damage the longer a fight goes on. On, like, for example, floor 24 of Battle Tower, the enemies there were eventually one-shotting my characters and doing quite literally over 7,000 damage. So even though technically there hasn't been like a hard turn limit as far as I'm aware in the game, this mechanic of ramping enemy damage effectively means that there is a soft turn limit that exists before enemies just start murdering you for taking too long. Maybe I only feel this way because I don't have a level defender right now. Maybe the trick is to run both a healer and a defender for better sustain, but this ramping damage thing makes the combat power recommendations that Exedra gives you very misleading because you can throw teams that are higher than the recommended power level and still lose. To summarize my week 3 assessment of this game, my biggest takeaways are that the gameplay is familiar, basically Star Rail gameplay but with a few different tweaks. The gacha can be nice with its base 3% 5-star rate, and rerolling is very easy, so you should have a good start. But it's best if you save up for pity and commit to a single banner. There's a lot of initial content, and playing through the game and leveling up characters is quite easy and intuitive for the most part, especially if you're already familiar with other gachas such as Nikke or Blue Archive. Navigating the game itself is a massive pain in the ass though, with how slow the game is with its animations, and so far it seems like you can get most or almost all of the content done in the game as a pure free-to-play, with the exception of like the higher floors of Battle Tower and Raids. So, do I recommend Exedra? My answer is yes, but mainly if either of the following 2 conditions applies to you. First, if you are a fan of the Madoka IP and you don't mind playing gacha, and second, if you are either a current or former Honkai Star Rail player and you genuinely enjoy, or enjoyed, past tense, Star Rail gameplay. If neither of these applies to you, then I don't know if I can recommend this game to you. It's not that it's bad per se, but it's more that there's nothing that really makes it stand out in my opinion, which is admittedly kind of crazy to say, given that Exedra is technically a 3D game that manages to retain the original Madoka art style, and it's got some pretty good animations, especially with its explosions. Everyone has an explosion in their ultimates for some reason. But the thing is, Exedra isn't open world. It's not even half open world like Star Rail is, because you can't actually control your magical girls when they're doing their exploration while going through story. If you want top tier animations in a gacha, go play Zenless. Nothing about the gameplay in Exedra really stands out enough or does anything different enough for me to recommend it specifically just for that. Which leaves story as like the last reason that you would want to play this game for, but the thing is, unless you already heard good things about Madoka's story, I would imagine that most people who aren't familiar with this IP would look at a gacha that's about underage magical girls, right? And the last thing they expect out of a gacha like this is a good story. I mean, Blue Archive exists too, so maybe I'm just being pessimistic here, but still, if you're curious about the story, you'd want to watch the anime and read the other source materials first before getting into Exedra anyway. At least, I would think so. If you do decide to try it out though, here are some tips that I've learned over the past 3 weeks of playing Exedra. First, reroll for whoever you want, either your favorite magical girl or top tier. Once you're done re-rolling, take your best characters and make a balanced team with them. 1 or 2 attackers, 1 or 2 buffers, maybe a debuffer, especially if you have Felicia, because I think she's top tier, at least 1 breaker, and a healer or a defender. Because of the whole ramping damage mechanic that I mentioned earlier, I think investing into both a healer and a defender might be what you need to beat late game bosses. However, I am fairly detached from the rest of the Exedra community, so I haven't kept up with what's meta in this game, so I could be wrong about this whole double sustain strat. What I do know is that abusing elemental weaknesses is still very important, even though at first glance it doesn't seem as important because technically any weakness can reduce toughness on any enemy. I'm pretty certain that magical girls who can take advantage of enemy weaknesses have bonuses against them, like a damage bonus and other perks. So far, it seems like you only need to invest into a single team. I haven't come across content in the game yet that requires you to bring in 2 full teams. Obviously, this is likely to change in the future, but for now, a single well-invested team with maybe 1 or 2 backup characters for different elements for different fights should be able to get you deep into story. I would say split up your stamina use either 70-30 or 60-40 on XP and skill gems respectively for early game. You'll definitely need a lot of XP to make sure your main team keeps up with story power levels and to level up some backup characters that, as I mentioned before, have different elements or roles that you might need for different boss fights. But don't neglect farming skill gems, since leveling skills also directly increases your team's power level. Try to give your characters whatever 5-star portraits you earn from clearing story or events, since they give a lot more stats than 4-star portraits, especially when they're fully ascended. Also, do not upgrade your 4-star portraits. I believe the upgrade materials for them cannot be farmed, and instead you gotta go get them from event shops or something. So you don't want to dump a ton of portrait level up materials on portraits you're just gonna end up ditching later. So I'd say only start upgrading portraits when you've got 5-star ones you know you're gonna use for a while and you've got a good supply of those portrait upgrade materials. For gacha rolls, I highly recommend that you hold on to your gems, like I said earlier, until you know you have enough to guarantee pity, which is 60,000 gems. Don't do what I did and just dump every 3,000 gems you get from story or something into a banner, because you too might get fucked and go 7 or 8 multis in a row and not get jack shit. There is a permanent banner that also appears to have a permanent rate up for Pluvia Madoka, Iroha, and Oriko, and all 3 of them are top tier, I believe. So if you're the type of gacha player who just YOLO rolls a lot, then technically this is the best banner to do so, because you can still build up pity and not have to worry about your pity expiring like the other limited banner pities will. Otherwise, save your gems and don't get baited. Push through story content as hard as you can. There's quite a few things that are gated behind story or account progress, such as unions, PvP, the support ability thing, and different story difficulties. So if you do decide to pick up Exedra, try to get as deep into story as you can and as fast as you can too. And remember that the stuff you buy from event shops and certain story rewards go to your gift box, so you have to go there first and then redeem them in order to actually receive them. Lastly, if you're gonna spend spend money, remember that if you transfer accounts onto another platform, so you go from like iOS to Android or something, or vice versa or whatever, especially if you're going to be playing on PC once the Steam version comes out, whatever it does, your paid gems will not transfer, I believe, only your free ones. Why it's like this, I have no idea. I just know that for some gacha games, especially some of the Japanese ones, they have this annoying ass tendency to not let your paid gems transfer if you switch platforms. So make sure you spend all your paid gems first before doing that. Oh, and make sure to buy the premium passes for the first free month. Just don't forget to cancel them after you get all the rewards so you don't get charged for the second month. And that'll do it for my first impressions / tips and tricks video for Exedra. For those of you already playing, hopefully you're enjoying it. I certainly am, despite the few gripes that I have with it so far. If you're new to the channel, be sure to like the video and subscribe. I make weekly gacha content, so make sure to stay tuned for more. I also stream both here on YouTube and on Twitch, so check out the stream if you want to hang out for some gacha and chill, and consider supporting me on Patreon if you really enjoy the content. That's it from me. Thanks for watching. Be cool, y'all, and we'll see you next time.